After you kind of finished with the whole AMS thing, how has that taken you from there to what you do today?
It's interesting. So, I mean, I took a kind of year out to study Islam and the Islamic sciences and Arabic abroad. So that was always like a kind of passion of mine, it's always an ambition. So, I remember saving up, like for a year we saved up and we finally lived the dream, right? And when we went there, now my intention was like, look, I'm teaching Islamic studies, like I'm a qualified teacher, top of my game as a teacher, but I also teach Islamic studies on the side. And I thought, and my thinking was this, that I'm going to go abroad and become qualified as a Islamic studies teacher. And I'll come back and teach the world, right? And then, I couldn't have been more wrong, because what I realized was that to be an alim, right? It's a big difference between being an alim and like being a speaker or being an imam or even being an Islamic studies teacher. Being an alim, and this is the best analogy I can think of, is like having a PhD in a subject. Right? So if you were to ask me, Tushar, do you want to do a PhD in English? I'd be like, no, no way, right? I'm happy teaching high school kids, GCSE. I don't want to go any further than that. I love that level, right? And it's still quite a high level. That's more than most people will never analyze text at that a GCSE level. That level of textual analysis, if you do that properly, that's more than enough for life, right? You will be able to do Shakespeare, poetry, and if you do it properly, like A-star level, it's a very good level. Beyond that, I'm not interested, right? So with Islamic studies, what I realized that to get it to be an alim, that this PhD level kind of study, like I had a friend who went with me. He was actually younger than me. He was like a younger brother. He went first, right? And then when I went there, like I remember going book shopping with him once. Like he took me to an Islamic bookshop, and the guy had a list, like going back like years, right? And mashallah, he's now Sheikh Tabriz Azam for Seekers Guidance. Right? At the time, he was Talib Ilm, he was like my younger brother, and I think that's when the pen dropped. I saw him. He's like like with quite joy, happily going around getting these arcade books on grammar and linguistics and history and all the. And I thought, I don't have that in me. I can't do that, And I had no excuse. I had all the time in the world, but I just couldn't get myself to read. I didn't want to do it. I didn't have the himmah for that. I realized then, and then one of my teachers said to me, says, Tushar, the thing is, the best thing we can do for this ummah is if every single person does what they're best at. They excel at their own skills. We don't need everyone to be an alim, And I kind of knew that in theory, but I had to go out there and experience it and try it. And that's when I realized, and that guilt went. And I have a lot of my clients a lot of Muslims, practicing Muslims, have this default that I need to go abroad and study and be an alim. If I don't do that, I'm not a proper Muslim or something, I'm not. But I realized that it's about the practice. It's about the implementation. It's about being a great Muslim and having this knowledge and learning enough to kind of fulfill your obligations and follow the sunnah and do that to excellence. You don't have, it's a fard al-kifaya. Some people will go out and do this and teach the ummah in a technical manner or in a scholarly manner. That's fine. So when I came back, I was like, okay, what do I do now? Do I want to go back into Muslim schools? Do I want to go? And the thing is, one of the conflicts I had working in Muslim schools, 90% of teachers in Muslim schools are women, right? Maybe 95. And there's a good reason for that. Is because of the whole pay structure and everything. So they work part-time and job share, or they work full-time. They don't need the income. The reason why there's not many men there, and the reason why men end up doing so many multiple roles, is because of the income, the difficulty of the pay and things like that. So it's like, and I think I've had this conversation with you in the past, like, you have that period where you're grafting and you're working, not making much, you're struggling to make ends meet, and you think, and you don't feel fulfilled. And I felt like, I feel like, I had to tutor on the side to kind of make up my income, right? So I felt, and as a teacher, to be a really good teacher, you have to give it your all. There's no time left, right? It takes everything. And so I realized that, look, I'm not really doing justice to myself or my students. I can't give fully to them, so I feel guilty about that. And I feel guilty that I'm not giving to my family because I'm not earning enough, and I can't, establish myself. So I realized that, what? I'm going to kind of focus on my tutoring business. That's when my entrepreneur journey really started, right? So I was working part-time since 2008. So the whole time I was working in Muslim schools, it was always part-time. I always had to keep the tutoring business. And sometimes I'd earn more on the tutoring than I would, in the Muslim school. And so that's when I decided to go kind of, focus on my tutoring. And I'd do my tutoring business, and then I'd have my supply teaching on the side. And that's a nice thing. And I say this to people, that having qualifications is very useful, because when you decide to make that shift into entrepreneurship, if you ever do, if you have the qualification, that skill set, the professional experience, you can always use that to have a side gig while you're building up your your business. And so I focused on tutoring. Whilst I was doing tutoring, when did I decide to do time management? So I was building my tutoring business, and I think that my natural entrepreneur spirit came because I wouldn't just do tutoring. I started doing online tutoring, right? Because even when I went abroad, I thought, one of the ways I funded myself was I kept a few students online. And this was before the big online revolution in terms of, everyone teaching online. This was before that. I was teaching on Skype. I thought, hey, this is quite possible. When I came back, I kept students from abroad. And as I had more online students, I started, because I had a passion for reading, I thought, and kids don't, I started a book club, an online book club. And it was quite successful, right? I was like, oh, wow, there's like a class, and I'm earning much more money by having 4, 5, 10 to 20 students in a class compared to doing it one-to-one. And so I did that. And then I do like an online professional grammar course for Muslim professionals. So I always kind of would come up creatively with these ideas and just do these online courses for this and online courses for that. And then I started doing an online adults book club. Because I think what happened, one of my teachers recommended, he actually recommended for Ramadan. He actually recommended for Ramadan reading. What he does, he recommends obviously reading Quran and things like that. But he also recommended, once he recommended a Dickens novel, right? It was Barnaby Rudge, right? And that's actually looks about it's in the context of Catholics and Protestants and persecution of the Catholics. And I think this was a time of Islamophobia in Britain. So that was one of the reasons he recommended that book, so we could learn about that and see how this has happened in England in the past. And also it's a break from the ibadah, read something rather than going on Netflix, right? And so I was really excited, like, oh, great, I'm going to talk to all my friends, and ask them about how was Barnaby Rudge? How did you enjoy the book? The Sheikh told us to read it. What do you think? And then when I met all my friends and I was talking to them, nobody read it. Right? I was like, why didn't you read it? Oh, it's Dickens. It's so hard. It's so difficult. And this is the type of person I am. When something like that happens, I'm like, okay, that's it. So I made a course, right? So that's when I founded the adult book. I thought, forget children. Adults need this. And one thing for me, when I grew up, I know there's so many initiatives for children. I see it all the time, like the madrasas, literature for children, and it's all great. But because I think I became practicing later on in life, I always felt that, what about us? We've still got 20, 30, 40 years left of our life, inshallah. We're still running the world. We're still the movers and shakers. If we're focusing everything on the kids and we neglect us, right, we're not going to be able to even parent our kids properly, right? So I always felt passionate about adult education. And I think that's part of my transition. Like, I still teach kids and I still have that part of me, but I've always loved training adults as well, because I've always felt like we're neglected a bit. And so when I did that adult book club, alhamdulillah, that was popular. People came, a lot of people interested in literature. And then that just kind of evolved into, okay, let's do non-fiction books as well, like How to Win Friends and Influence People. And so that kind of started evolving. And so then I said to one of my teachers, and I said, look, what do you think about, that's when the idea came for, maybe I should go back to time management training, right? I mean, do you want me to tell you how that started? That actually started before, in 2000. It's quite a funny story how that started.
So that you did before you started the book clubs and stuff?
Yeah, so I kind of did it in 2008, 2009, before the Muslim schools came. The Muslim schools, when that opportunity came, I dropped the time management training.